Hi there, Victor Pross speaking to you, anarchist artist. Okay, today's video goes out to the minarchists, and in all fairness, I was a minarchist at one point in my intellectual development of the objectivist sort, and that is to say, by being a minarchist, that I espoused and advocated a small government. I just love that term, small government. It's supposed to, remove the negative taint of being a statist from the plate. Because no, I'm not a statist. I believe in liberty and freedom. I don't advocate big government. I advocate small government. Small, see, really small government. But according to the anarchists, though, and just according to the facts, the state as a social phenomena in the world, dating back 6,000 years plus, is a predatory entity that establishes itself and maintains itself by brute force, physical violence, the threat of physical violence, and large-scale, massive bullshit propaganda to ideologically disarm people as well as physically disarm them. And so it's been a physical fuck over, and it's been a mental fuck over. It's a predatory entity that has used those two main sources of power, intellectual power, preempting morality, and just basic in-your-face physical violence and the threat of physical violence. That's the state. It's a predatory entity. It's violence. It's the institutionalization, the monopolization of physical force. Period. So we got to ask the question: is that, as far as the anarchist is concerned, it's a cancer on society. The anarchist is calling for the cancer to be removed. The statist, however, feels that the state plays a vital role in the functioning of a society. How they come to that conclusion, I don't know. I've been there myself, but I finally woke up as soon as I realized the nature of the beast, when I finally grasped the nature. Once I had been exposed to the right arguments and evidence, it got me thinking, and got me thinking long and hard. And it was not a casual toss-off, this whole idea. It was something that was very, that I undertook with a great deal of rigor in studying all the relevant matters, and it was kind of like an emotional release as well, so it wasn't an easy experience, like coming off some dreadful drug. And that's what statism is, basically. And with that, we do live in an information age these days, so for those small government minarchist type, I mean, if they really want to know, if they're so gung-ho about this institution, this is the thing that kills me. They're out there voting and writing blogs, and they're just, for those types who are very politically active, I mean, don't you think that they would take the time, the same amount of time or energy, or exert some time and investment in knowing what it is that they're propping up beyond some given candidate who's running? Why don't they just step back instead of just staring at a bark of wood, which can be any given political candidate that they're supporting and wanting to get into office, like Ron Paul, instead of just staring up close at a bark of wood, why don't they step back and look at the tree? Even better, why don't they step back and look at the fucking forest? And to ask larger questions, and to ask, what the fuck is the state? What is this? What is the origin of it? What is it by its very nature? What are the ethical implications of such an institution? What is the factual, as existential results of such an institution? For all of time, anywhere in the world where you do have an institution, why don't they ask these type of questions? But I get ahead of myself. Now, as I say, there's different types of stripes of minarchism. You know, there's constitutionalists, and the type that I was, the Randian objectivist model of government, and basically where Rand stood when it came to the issue of government was ultimately the protector of individual rights, to protect men's property and liberty. And it's a very condensed presentation, of course, you understand. But basically Rand argued for what she argued to be the proper functions of government, where, first of all, the law courts to settle any contractual disputes, and to act as a third party and passionate arbiter between disputes between any two parties or parties of more, and to have any contractual disagreements settled peacefully. And then you had the police to protect us from the aggression of our fellow citizens, should they be inclined to do, either by fraud or theft or murder, rape, whatnot, and which also brings in the law courts as well, naturally. And then there was the military to protect us from the possibility of foreign aggression. So that's basically was the functions of the government: the law courts, the police, and the military. And it was to protect us, ultimately to protect human liberty. And then you have other minarchists who agree with that and toss all that into the mix, but they also have other things in mind as well. They might advocate state schooling, having a compulsory schooling for children. They might advocate we have libraries in the fire department, and state meddling into the health industry as well. And they might toss in a few other things, and then you have other varied flavors of minarchism where they might toss in a few of those things, but take out I mean, there is no like one homogeneous page that the minarchist is on. You know, some will leave. You know, we should leave education in the private sector, and others would advocate otherwise. And but basically, they all announce themselves though is that yes, the government must be in areas A, B, and C, and maybe D. But other than that, if it oversteps its boundaries beyond that, then it becomes it's no longer a protector of liberty, and it becomes man's greatest violator of liberty. So it's only to be in certain areas, and as soon as it steps out of those areas, it's no longer man's protector and guardian. It becomes man's violator, and something that is not that will not bode too well when it comes to living in a free society. But we got to ask the minarchists the question. Now, here's the question that I would have for minarchists. Now, Rand herself, the philosopher Ayn Rand, knew very well that if coming from her standpoint as a minarchist, that the government is to act as man's protector. And she was a very boisterous advocate of liberty and freedom. And she spoke very passionately about the non-aggression principle in her ethics, and she considered her philosophical system to be fully consistent and integrated, and she also applied that to the government, in theory at least, that the government was not to be an aggressor against man, but to protect man against aggressors. So the problem, though, was the issue of funding. Like here she advocates a government, and we know the government at present that it funds itself through coercion, through taxation. So what obviously Rand was very bright, right? She saw the contradiction, staring her in the face like a boil on somebody's ass. It's like, hey, what a nice smooth ass there, but oh, there's a fucking boil. That's right, so there's a contradiction. She's a passionate advocate of the non-aggression principle, but taxation is an obvious violator and contradiction to, and contrary, rather, to the non-aggression principle. So what Rand proposed was voluntary taxation. Voluntary taxation. Now, apparently Rand didn't have her Webster dictionary at hand when she proposed this idea, because perhaps she doesn't fully understand what the fuck taxation means. Taxation is a expropriation of wealth. It is the theft. It is the violent or the threat of violent expropriation of a certain percentage of wealth. That is what tax is. So I don't know what the fuck she's talking about when she said voluntary taxation. But you see, Rand had such great antipathy and anger towards to the anarchist position, especially to the Murray Rothbard school of anarchism. She thought that anarcho-capitalism was a ridiculous monstrosity, some kind of like subjective cesspool that belonged to the hippies of the right, as she said. And so she didn't want to use the language of anarcho-capitalists, because if we're just talking about the government offering vital protection services, that's and they if they're to maintain themselves, that they can be a possible flourishing industry in the business of protecting rights, they need to be funded, of course. So with the whole idea of voluntary taxation, she doesn't want to use the language of the market, you see, because that would simply be payment for services rendered, the services of protection, and money, taxation, representing a fee, payment for services rendered. This is the language of anarcho-capitalism, a free market anarcho-capitalism. But she had to choose like different language, right? Voluntary taxation. So it's just it's a complete intellectual mess. It's nonsense walking on stilts, and it's one of those questions that has never been answered by Rand or any of objectivist intellectuals, of just exactly how this voluntary taxation would work. Because if it is voluntary, if we're supposed to just recognize the viable and valuable services that the government is offering, wonderful. Yeah, if it's voluntary, that's great. I'm all sign me up for it, though. But does that mean, though, that state, that government offering those services is going to exclude and bar all competitors from a given field who wish to offer the same services? Does it become a violent or a monopoly, or does it become a monopoly? How is that monopoly maintained? Through sheer merit? If it was offering services, viable, valuable services that people realize that they do need and want, and they're willing to pay for it, that's wonderful. And if the monopoly of protection services is being offered and maintains itself, maintains a monopoly through sheer merit, I don't think there would be an anarchist who would oppose that. But let's say that you do have competitors. Does the original protector, so-called protector, bar through physical force all other competitors wanting to enter the field? And whether this becomes like a logical problem or one of practicality, that's a separate question altogether. The one here is pertaining to ethics and pertaining to logical consistency. That's what concerns me. So the Randites have never answered that question. And if there's any out there, I'd certainly like to hear your 2 cents on it. This is Victor Pross speaking, anarchist artist, signing out. Pop goes the culture.